Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Realistic Formula Championship. It's the season finale, round 14 of season 5, and we're here at the Yas Marina circuit, ready to find out and sort out the last few things that need to be sorted out in terms of the championship. The Drivers' Championship, although technically not sealed going into this round, now is sealed because of Daniel Llorénte not racing today. So Malachi is the RFC Season 5 champion, but I'm sure we'll get much more reaction after this race. Also confirmed after the last round was the Constructors title after a bit of a change in the standings late on due to an appeal, but it has led to Red Bull Racing being crowned the Constructors champions of Season 5. Red Bull win it for the third time in RFC. But as one Red Bull in Statlev is setting purple sectors, there's been a bit of controversy in practice yesterday with some incidents occurring, and that has led to some qualifying bans given out to a handful of drivers, which is not ideal, but they will be 20th, 19th, or no, 19th, 18th and 17th on the grid. Statlev setting the quickest time from Edward with 12 minutes to go in Q1. But that is the situation we've got, situation we've been dealt with, thanks to, let's just say, a few creative interpretations that, well, I don't really know, just holding people up and then just smashing into them because they held you up by mistake. Let's say to put it lightly. But let's just have a little look at who's currently out there. Seems like the champion Malachi is on his first push lap in Q1. Well, he can't have not set a personal best, but that's just something that happens with the first runs. Now into the final sector, rounding the last corner, and goes P2 on the medium compound. Brazzers here, making his way very first Q1 lap and into fourth. So a good effort from the Racing Bull. Looks, I think, Dropux here in the Alpine on a push lap. Here, Dropux, who started the year as a Red Bull reserve, signed for Alpine just recently, and will be hoping to get into Q2, especially with what's gone on with the situation with the bans, and goes into third place. That will do very nicely indeed. Let's see, Pastry here, I think, making his way to the line as Bramble just ahead goes into second, Pastry into 8th, across the line to start a lap, Slava behind, Charlotte Perkins not, or might have just started another lap, to be fair. Also, no, he's not on a lap because he's been eliminated. Obviously, Danny was I was just looking at because he'd done some green sectors, but I think LOL, the sister Mercedes, trying to get a bit of a slipstream into turn 9. This corner, which was reprofiled going into the 2021 race, and certainly a lot more of a flowing section. This last sector as well, much quicker in terms of pace, as LOL rounds the final corner. How much does he give it with track limits? A bit of a slide and goes into 6th. Behind, we got Sailmakers just crossing the line to start a lap. I think Slava, though, making his way to the end of a lap here, but invalidates. So that will not be a lap time on the board. Behind, I believe, going into the pit lane. Yep, these two, Perkins and Pastry. Jonathan out there on an out lap. Lol. Obviously on an out lap as well after that lap we just saw. Sailmakers seems to be the one who's doing a push lap at this point. And we'll see how the sectors stack up for the driver who has stepped in to the Mercedes seat a couple of times, but is technically an Aston Martin reserve. And now makes his way into the final sector, but runs wide and invalidates. And then seems to run off the track there. Datev has decided his time is good enough. Sailmakers seems to be taking a creative interpretation to track limits. Jonathan there getting out of the way as Sailmakers almost runs into the back of Jonathan. We don't need any more incidents in practice or qualifying. So Jonathan now is starting a lap. We run down into the last 7 minutes of this Q1 session where only one driver should be eliminated, I think, because 19th, 18th, and 17th will be filled, so whoever's that unlucky 16th place, that is going to be unfortunate for them. Let's just check in on the standings then. As you can see, Red Bull with that 66-point lead, ensuring that they've won this championship. In the drivers, it would have been a dramatic finale, but it wasn't to be. So Malachi has taken that championship. But Jonathan getting to the end of the second sector and is improving for sure out there, the Alpine. And to turn 12, just keep the minimum speed up through this tight section. But invalidates. So was finding time and now has completely thrown it away. Malachi, though, he looks like he's on a better lap, but now obviously has moved to the soft compound. So we'll see what he can do into these last couple of corners. Keeps it within track limits. Last corner now. And runs it to the line with the quickest time we've seen so far, by nearly 0.3 of a second. Dilbast in the Haas out there. And looks to be improving, but doesn't seem to have much ERS left. We'll just check that. 11% ERS remaining into the last sector. And now doesn't particularly take an ideal line through there, and that was almost another track limit invalidation, but just about keeps it alive. Last corner now for Dilbast, and is still in 14th place with the slowest time of anyone who set a valid time, but that is good enough as it stands to make it through. But for how much longer will that be the case? Well, those drivers behind, they just need to set a valid time, but easier said than done, it seems. The drivers out there. You can see the field spread quite tight in some positions, but then obviously Dilbast at the back of the pack, a second off Charlotte Perkins. So That is not ideal. Malachi then peeling into the pit lane. The RFC Season 5 champion. So, the main question going into these last 3.5 minutes is, will Sailmakers, will Slava get the times required to knock the retired Dilbast out? So, Dilbast is just retired, seemingly just on the track. No idea what that's about, but that is not, I'm sure, what would have had in mind. Yellow flag out there. Just going to check if there's anything going on before we get into these final runs. And, well then, everybody's just playing that waiting game. And it seems like the Aston Martin team, Sailmakers, seems to be getting out there and getting on with this. Many drivers seemingly having confidence of just remaining in that pit lane, and well, with only 2 drivers back there who can, well, if you look 12th, 13th, 14th, out of qualifying now, so, well, they will progress as long as they're in the top 15. Can Sailmakers and Slava knock out Dilbast? Really, that's going to be what we're looking for. If one of them invalidates, that will literally be it. Because we seem to just have a shootout here to see whether they can just put a valid lap on the board, which is quicker than Dilbast. That is the key. Everybody has retired except for Bramble and these two. I know Pastry as well seems to be not retired, but, well, he's not going out now. But there were Sailmakers has invalidated on the outlap, so don't want to put any doubt into him, but let's see what he's got. Just needs to do a time quicker than Dilbast, and he'll be through. Provided what Slava does, well, yeah, depending on what Slava does, but just do a time quicker than Dilbast, and you'll be through. So, keeping it within track limits so far through this fast first sector after turn 1, and is not near the leading pace, but doesn't need to be at the moment. It's not a personal best in the first sector, it doesn't seem to be. But now we're on this DRS run into turn 6. Spot the braking point. Obviously, brake marker boards are gone, but it probably doesn't matter with racing line. It would definitely be affecting me if I was driving out there, but doesn't affect Sailmakers on this occasion. And it's now the quick left-hander of turn 9 to negotiate. 8/10 down on Malachi's time, but it's more than good enough, provided he can just keep out within track limits. And I almost thought then that was going to be the lap gone into the last sector. Keep it within the white lines. Just about does, but now it's just about these last couple of corners. Last one now, a bit deep, it's off the track. Oh, it's going to count, he's off the track, but it's not invalidated. And Sailmakers has made it into Q2. A bit of controversy there. And now we see Slava, who's surely going to do a lap time good enough, and does into 8th. But there we go. That is it for this session. And Sailmakers does make it through in spite of that controversy at the end there. Just check the lap times, just in case you want to track them or anything. Any incidents going on. But, well then. So, Q1 finishes with a bit of a shootout at the end. Not, a typical session you'd expect, but that was the way it panned out with the qualifying ban situation. It certainly gave us a bit of an intriguing dynamic, but Q2 will surely be a bit closer, and obviously more drivers will be involved with trying to get through into that top 10 shootout. But we now see the McLaren mechanics going out there. I'm just going to have a look at Sailmaker's name on there because his name is too long. Is it Sailmakers? I always forget how to pronounce that name. It's just, I know there's footballers called that, but yeah. But anyway, I was going to see what I could do because the name is too long that it just appears as no name. But I mean, it's not the biggest deal. But not, yeah. So, well, Q2 is obviously underway, but nobody's on a lap. So we'll just change it to something. Sailmakers. Right. It's just going to be Saily, because otherwise it doesn't fit. Well then, Q2. And we have a raft of activity for once. Front of this is the two McLarens, who have not managed to win the Constructors title, but are looking to secure second place in this round. And now they both get away with their first laps in Q2. So Bramble first, and then Malachi. And Bramble has immediately invalidated that lap, which is now going to allow Malachi to just be the lead McLaren here. Bramble gets out of the way of the Haas of Charlotte Perkins, and Malachi continues on with this first run in Q2. So uses that curb to brake, which is often what we see around the Abu Dhabi circuit, where you need to be really maximizing the track. I mean, you need to be doing it in most circuits, but you see it particularly here. Sector 2 in the books, and this is looking like a decent banker lap. Comparing that to he's nearly 3 tenths up on Lol in the first sector, but obviously Lol, a slightly slower car. We'll see how it shakes out though eventually. Statlev, a purple middle sector, as Malachi goes to the top with a 23.2. Charlotte Perkins about 1.8 seconds off as Pastry goes into second place. Behind, we have Edwards now just finishing that lap, goes into that second place. Sailmakers into the pits after invalidating as Statlev now makes his way across the line and goes quickest for Red Bull, the Constructors champions. Dropux into fourth, Miguel into seventh. Lol, first lap in Q2 is only good enough for fifth position. Tezza there in sixth for the Sauber. Looks like Rio Harris has potentially just started a lap here, so we'll see what he can do. A bit wide in turn 1, but no invalidation has popped up, so he gets away with it. Green flags waving. Must just be somebody letting someone by. Harris definitely maximising the track. He'll want a slipstream here, I'm sure. And this is good team play from the Saubers. Tezza then gets out of the way. And Rio continues on. And will now charge for the end of this second sector. I'm not entirely sure what that comparison is to Statlev there, because that was a 52 point. I'm not even sure what's going on there, but Rio Harris continues on as a McLaren is very slow and seems to have gone off there. Malachi, I'm not sure if he's just getting out of the way of other cars, but looks concerning for the world champion. Being off the track, I think he is back going again. There at the back of this snake as Harris crosses the line and goes into 9th for the Sauber. Bramble straight back out there again. Miguel, the driver, ahead, but that seems to be the first laps in the books. And Slapper on the medium seems to have done an excellent job. Looks like some drivers are on the used tyres. Looking at this, Lol, Malachi, Dropworks, Perkins seem to all be having greatly used tyres, over 20% for that lap, so that is something to take into consideration. But the yellow flags there is just for Miguel letting Bramble go. We'll see what Bramble can do. Bramble, who ended the pole streak of Daniel Llorénte last time out in Qatar, and will be wanting to make the top 10, that's for sure, in the McLaren. So let's see if he can complete a lap without invalidating this time. Into turn 1, try to use as much of the track as possible on exit, and that's exactly what he's done. His teammate just appearing from the pit lane behind, but that's okay. And Bramble is up on Statlev in the first sector. So that is good from Bramble. And Bramble now just focusing on the next braking point. Into turn 6, uses the curb. And a bit of wheel spin on the exit, unfortunately for him, but I'm sure that's not going to affect him too much in terms of getting out of this Q2 session and into Q3. And is now about 3.5 tenths down going into turn 9. Turn 9, try and get it flat as soon as you can and maximise the speed that you're going to carry into this now quite fast, slow section, really. Trying to keep the minimum speed up, a little bit of a slide, and that is not going to help him, but he should get into the top 5 regardless. Another little bit of an uneasy moment into the last corner, but he does go into 4th place as his teammate on the medium tyres now just starts the lap. And we'll see how the mediums compare to the used softs he was on before. This must be the mediums he used in Q1 as well. First sector, slightly down on his previous best, but it's not bad at all. And now they're going to do the same strategy as the Saubers in terms of getting that slipstream, getting that toe all the way down this back straight to turn 6. Bramble moves out of the way, and they keep going again. So we'll see how much time that might have gained them. Setting a 334 kilometers per hour speed trap certainly looks impressive, the quickest we've seen from anyone, and it is. a good middle sector, which has enabled him to keep in touch with the Red Bull of Statlev despite being on the medium tyres. He doesn't even really need this lap, I don't think, but he's just going to carry on with it. He's not going to use this set of tyres again, so he might as well just get on with it. As Rumble just slows down slightly behind, and Malachi rounds the final corner and crosses the line with the quickest time by nearly 0.3 of a second on the medium tyres. That is mighty from the world champion, as Pastry is on another improving lap and moves into 9th there. So anyone else on a lap, I think might have Lol out there, setting a very good first sector. So Lol needs improvement for sure, and he's also going to get a slipstream here down towards turn 6, but the Alpine goes off and I think hits the barrier there, if I'm not mistaken. The Alpine there of Dropux certainly going very deep into that corner and might have clattered that barrier. Lol, though, with another good sector. Here's purple at the bottom, but on the mini-map, but I'm not entirely sure that that's the case. But either way, he's still doing well out there. And this should be good enough to get into Q3. Statlev, Miguel and Bramble have now called it quits on this session, as Lol then goes ahead of those three and into second place behind only the world champion. So Dropux is just starting a lap. Harris is also on a push lap now, finding a bit of time, finding over 0.2 on his previous best in the first sector. That is impressive, it is fair to say. Well, the Sauber, who needs to find time if he's going to make Q3, but no matter where he qualifies, his race pace has been very good and impressive so far, and has carried Sauber ahead of Alpine in the standings. But Dropux is looking to change that. Harris, less than half a second down on Malachi's time now through the first two sectors. So that is exactly the sort of pace that Sauber and Rio Harris want to be displaying. And you now see this last sector, you can see him placing the car a lot better than what we've seen from other drivers so far. And he now makes his way around that last corner, crosses the line and goes into 7th, ahead of the Alpine of Dropux. And that pushes his teammate down into that elimination zone, as Dropux has invalidated his lap. No wonder. I am seeing potential front wing damage. Yes, so he must have hit that wall there, Dropux, after basically giving a tow away, giving that slipstream. And that might be costing. So, just a misjudgment there, and that may cost Alpine their progression to the next part of qualifying. So, let's see. I think we might have Edwards here going for push lap at the end of this session. Few out laps, last sector. Rio Harris, Dropux, that wing damage. And that is Perkins ahead. They're just letting Bradders by. Bradders, who I think is also on a lap, and we'll see what he can do for the V-Carb. Unfortunately, was basically taken out of the race on lap 1 after a collision with Arweb last time out. which I'm not entirely sure the complete specifics and who was exactly to blame, as it wasn't actually taken up with the FIA, but certainly led to Arweb being disqualified for facing the wrong way, and that is Bradders wide and invalidating his lap, and then heading into the barriers where Nicholas Latifi crashed in 2021, and he's now right in the barriers ahead of Edward, and that has earned him a 5-place penalty. So despite the qualifying bans, it looks like the qualifying ban people are not actually going to be at the back of the grid, which is quite peculiar. But that is the situation we've been dealt with. As Bradders invalidated, hit the wall, and then got in the way of the Ferrari, it seemed, and clipped the Ferrari as he tried to move. We'll see what Jonathan can do. Can Jonathan get ahead of Charlotte Perkins? Crosses the line, does get ahead of Charlotte Perkins, and knocks the Haas out. Rio Harris behind is on an improved lap, but is invalidated behind. And it seems like we're now looking to Pastry and Williams, and Slava and Williams have an answer. It looks like Pastry might. Slava doesn't. Pastry crosses the line, goes into 7th place, puts Jonathan into 10th and at risk. Slava crosses the line. It's not enough. A Sailmakers does get ahead of Bradders, gets ahead of Tezza there, and is in 13th place. And that is how this Q2 session will end, with Slava in the Williams, Charlotte Perkins in the Haas, Sailmakers in the Aston Martin, Tezza in the Sauber, and Bradders with that collision and that controversial moment being eliminated in Q2. So we'll see the reaction to that, I'm sure, but that is fortunate for both involved, because that's going to earn Bradders a spot at the back of the grid, unless there's a lobby restart or something. But last time lobbies were restarted, it seemed to go on for hours because settings were not right and someone was not in the race, and it's just complicated, but we'll see what comes of it. So we're left with a top 10 shootout involving both Alpine cars. Alpine, who are currently 7 points behind Sauber. So that could be a potential turnaround, but the Saubers are not far off, and obviously Rio Harris is involved at the front of the grid as well. So it's the top 10 shootout where we are just waiting to see it fully get underway. There we go, the timer has finally started to work and we're ready to go for this session, where both Alpine cars are here. Not sure if Jonathan's been in Q3 all season long, but well, he's done it in the finale. Abu Dhabi, Yas Marina. Dropbox as well, with decent pace as well, despite that damage and that bit of a moment down here at turn 6. It was fine in the end, but not ideal for the front wing, which would have had to be replaced. But see what the run plans are. Not quite sure how many sector tyres people have, but Jonathan, Lol, Rio Harris, Dropbox on the used tyres, it seems, for this first run. Not sure if we can check the tyre age. We might be able to when things start. I'm not sure if that carries on though from if it includes the previous laps they've done, but certainly they have the wear of the previous laps. Pollard gets knocked out the way by Rio Harris, who now starts this lap and will be looking to get a good banker lap on the board. Yeah, tyre age. Tyre age might work after they've done the first lap, but it's not the end of the world. We know I can check there. We can check and see that those are definitely used tyres for the Sauber of Rio Harris, who now pushes on, has McLaren right there, the Bramble. I believe. Yeah, Bramble literally tucked up behind, so that could cost the McLaren because Rio Harris isn't going to be waving Bramble by, and now Bramble will be held up by Harris for the entire final sector. So Bramble, not sure if he's going to go for a bit of an overtake here. Surely not. Ooh, they almost. Bramble, with that much more grip in the McLaren, is able to brake a lot with a lot more confidence. That Rio Harris will finish this lap basically neck and neck with Bramble. Bramble goes quicker by 1.5 seconds, but it's going to be nowhere near the pace of pole position, as we see from Malachi with a 22.1 behind. Edward just going to start a lap. Lol is finishing his lap here and will be looking to put a decent lap on the board. Is behind Bramble, so that's not an ideal lap, but on used tyres, of course. Statlev in the Red Bull looks to be on a good flying lap here. Quickest of anyone in the middle sector that we've seen. 17.4 for the first. Rounds that last corner. Stays comfortably within track limits and goes quickest by nearly 0.2 of a second. There's Miguel there in third. Statlev, who hasn't been on pole position yet this season, looking to do so in the finale. Jonathan, the slowest we've seen, as Dropbox there behind into 5th place for the Sauber car. With Sauber car, or for the Alpine, as Pastry there in 5th place. Harris in the Sauber, 2.7 seconds off, but wing damage potentially for Harris. Yep, lost that right side end plate, as Edward did finish that lap in the end. So there's definitely been a collision there with that amount of damage, and not sure if there potentially was another party involved. But Rio Harris with wing damage down in 9th. Jonathan, the slowest that we've seen. Statlev, the quickest time. So Statlev peeling back into the pits, as will everyone else, because nobody's on a lap right now. Now we look forward to seeing what drivers can do on their final flying laps, because this is certainly not over yet. Miguel, once again, good qualifying performance so far. Did actually out-qualify both Red Bull cars, if I'm not mistaken, last time out, so certainly shouldn't be discounted, but the Aston Martin's only got a certain amount of pace in it, surely. Oh, that was a bit of a... was bang into the barrier for Edward. Feeling back into the pits, sole Ferrari remaining after James was hit with that qualifying ban for shenanigans in practice yesterday, but Rio Harris instantly deciding that he wants to do a lap, have focus on him, and just he can do his lap with no distractions. So what is the potential for the Sauber? I mean, you've got to think that Pastry is going to be in his sights, I'm sure. And that will be a good target for him. Harris, as we can see, 18th place in the standings, but only joined a few races ago. And that's the standings. It's out of about 61, I think. So things are changing a bit for next season to make sure that kind of situation doesn't happen again. But for now, it's the situation we've got now. And the situation we've got is that Malachi is the champion for the drivers. Constructors was already sealed. Drivers technically not, but now it is sealed. We will see what happens for next season. Of course, car performance will be different, and that will change the dynamic slightly, but, well, what is going to be for sure is that McLaren are going to be a dominant package again, which is difficult to crack. But Daniel Llorénte did, of course, crack that code in qualifying with 10 poles out of 13 races he drove in, including 8 in a row between Silverstone and Jeddah was his last pole. So that was excellent in qualifying, but for race pace and just shenanigans going out there and disconnect and other things. I mean, both drivers have had bad luck, but they're so close in points now that it would have been a finale, but obviously it wasn't to be for those two. Rio Harris then, we see this lap going into turn 9, about 7/10 off Statlev, so this is looking pretty good for Rio Harris. Harris and the Sauber there might even be targeting getting ahead of Bramble. I mean, I'm sure Bramble can do a quicker lap and will do a quicker lap. I mean, he was held up by Harris, basically. I mean, no fault of Harris, of course. It was poor timing from the McLaren team and driver. But Harris makes his way around that turn 16 and goes just behind Bramble. So, does get ahead of Pastry, like I said, might be the target, but we'll see what the others have in response. But that means that the others do have to respond, because he has got the lap on the board ready to be challenged. So Miguel might have actually just started a final flying lap here as traffic exiting the pit lane, but I think it might just be fine for Miguel to swoop by, and it is. I'm just listening into turn 5. That seemed very smooth indeed at the corner where Max Verstappen famously overtook Lewis Hamilton in 2021, and a corner which was obviously changed in preparation for that race. No brake marker boards now because of somebody probably just taking them out, but maybe he's racing line anyway, even though it's really fun not to use racing line. Miguel, a bit of a slide coming out of turn 6-7. Now into turn 9, it's quite wide here, but might be okay, but he's not. I don't think he's finding time on his current best, but he might still pull something out the bag in these last couple of corners. But that is an invalidation, which is going to mean that is the end of his qualifying session. 3rd place at best for him. Dropbox is also invalidated, I think, but Dropbox is on an outlap, so that will be fine for him. see Malachi then, who is on a lap, but actually Rio Harris might be on another push lap. He's only got 10% ERS, so I doubt he's going to improve much from here. Dropbook's ahead on a push lap as well. The 10th up on his previous best. It's Malachi there. He's finding good time. Rio Harris is actually potentially improving here, so we'll just tune in and see, because he's certainly going for it in these last few corners. Jonathan goes into 6th place as Edward goes into 3rd ahead of Miguel, but Harris still going for another lap after that previous one and crosses the line but doesn't improve. Now then, we'll look back to Dropbox and Malachi. We missed Edward and Jonathan, but Edward's in 3rd, but is still behind Malachi. Malachi and Statlev seem to be the ones going for pole position here. Statlev finding time out there, still on a lap despite that animation, and Dropbox ahead of Malachi, crosses line, goes into 5th. Malachi improves but misses out by 24 milliseconds, which is going to mean that Statlev is going to cross the line for Red Bull, and Statlev is not going to improve, but Statlev is going to take pole position for the first time for Red Bull, first time in RFC, and it is Statlev on top in qualifying. Red Bull with another pole position this season. It's a Statlev and Malachi front row. No Daniel Llorénte, but it's still a Red Bull on pole position for about the 9th time in 10 races. Malachi tried his best. It was almost there. Statlev wasn't able to find all of the time in the end. But his first lap is the one that counted. So we head towards the race. Lol rejoining the session just in time, I think. And we will now look ahead to seeing what is going to go down. It could have been a title deciding race. It could have been a constructor deciding race. Ferrari could still leapfrog Mercedes with a 1-2. It's probably not going to happen. Williams could be caught by Sauber. Williams could catch Haas. Alpine could catch Sauber. Sauber could catch Williams. It's all going down in there. In the drivers, positions might change, but they're not the decisive ones, really. Statlev can't catch Lol. For constructors as well, Mercedes could still catch McLaren, but McLaren are in a decent position for this race compared to Mercedes. Mercedes are 10th and one of the last few positions. I'm not entirely sure what that position was, but because of the Bradders penalty and also just because they all had qualifying bans, I'm not entirely sure the order which they went out in, but Bramble joining the session. Is he going to make it in time? Bramble 6th on the grid. There's some work to do to get ahead of Dropbox and Miguel and try and get up into that podium fight involving Edward, Malachi and Statlev. Strategies should be a one-stop, medium and hard tyres, as long as there's not chaos with safety cars, which we've not had too much of, to be fair, this season. I mean, there still might be. There's no definite crystal ball that's going to tell us. We're going to find out when we get into the race. Might be waiting just to make sure that drivers can join who need to get into the session, but soon enough we'll be racing in Yas Marina. Seemingly just waiting for the first person to ready up. I'm sure we'll be getting going. Barreling down turn number 1. Lights coming on in Abu Dhabi. It's the last time in Season 5. It's lights out, and away we go. Statlev immediately into the lead, but Malachi's going to dive up the inside, and Malachi takes the lead ahead of Statlev in turn 1. Malachi catches Statlev out, going wide. There is the Alpine car of Jonathan in the background, as Statlev's going to challenge back into turn 5 immediately. Statlev trying to go around the outside. That might open the door for Edward. Side by side there is the Alpine of Jonathan, and also Pastry in the Williams. And there Malachi does pull ahead into the lead still. Statlev almost challenging, as down the inside goes Miguel on the Ferrari of Edward, and Edward holds that position, but it's not over yet. Down towards turn 9, side by side goes Rio Harris and Lol, and Malachi continues to lead this Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. So Malachi didn't get the pole position, but has managed to get that lead immediately of this race. But the battles behind still carry on, with Lol going wide. And that might actually open the door here, as Lol goes up the inside of Rio Harris. Rio Harris goes wide. And that means that Lol does overtake, but I'm not sure if the stewards might be having a look at that eventually, whenever it comes to be. Malachi streaking away out front from Statlev. But the train is the top 6, and then that Lol and Rio Harris as Fluck and James Neas there go wheel to wheel. The Ferrari and the Red Bull, and they stay in formation, it seems, even though James is looking up the inside. There's also Danny there. As ahead, we've got Jonathan sneaking past on Lol, and Drop Hooks going ahead into 4th place for the Alpine. Miguel and Drop Hooks wheel to wheel through turn 9. Bramble just having to hold back and hold stations here, and they almost run. The Alpine of Dropix almost runs Miguel off track, but Miguel does hold the position, but has now dropped out from the top 3. Bramble just having to be patient, but now down towards turn 1. Is there an opportunity? Not quite on this occasion. And he'll stay behind, but he's desperate to make a move. He doesn't want to be letting the leaders get away. And Fluck going backwards, it seems. Fluck falling back behind the Salbert, falling back behind Danny. Bramble's made the move on Dropix. We'll just check in on what's going on back here, as also Bramble makes the move on Miguel. So there we go then. Oh, Miguel with a big moment, and that's going to cost him DRS potentially. He's still got it for now, but he's dropped out of that range, and that is not what Miguel wanted at that moment. Just losing the position to Bramble and then getting out of shape. Statlev has taken the lead, but I'm sure those positions will swap over many a time before the end of this one. And Perkins there in 15th place. Everybody on the mediums except for Perkins, Tezza and Dilbast. Dilbast in 19th place, running off far off the back of anyone. And that not what Haas wants. And there is Fluck, maybe having a look, seeing potential damage potentially for Dropux here. Let's just check in. Front wing end plate we can see missing. Bradders making a move on Pastry there. Fluck making a move on Tezza. Malachi still just managing that position like he's done so many times this season. Right on board with Jake Fluck, potentially looking for a move. Tezza goes in deep. Fluck with the cutback, a bit of lag, but he's going to get that position. Because ahead, we see Lol has gone past on Miguel. Bramble's gone. Bramble's not in the train. So, this train seems to be going to be the train that is going to have... It's going to be the most contested in this race. 5th down. So literally everyone apart from Dilbast. There's Fluck and Danny. Both drivers banned from qualifying. And both still towards the rear of the field, but Danny getting out of shape and Fluck getting by. That could have gone a lot worse. But then somehow Danny's also got back through. I swear Danny just had a huge moment. I don't know. Out front, Malachi takes the lead again. There. Ahead of Statlev and Edward. Edward, who did drive in F2 for Kramer. And now Statlev's actually going to have a look again towards turn 9. And is now ahead. Going into there. This Fluck and Danny battle continues on. Danny, I wonder if he's like losing connection or something. That's why he looks like he's having moments, but he's not. Because look, every time Fluck tries to overtake him, he just lags back in front. But this time, I think he has got it. Oh no, Danny's fighting back again. He's just, he refuses to be overtaken. Surely now that's the position for Jake Fluck. And it is. Oh, Tezza in the wall. Tezza, where Bradders had that moment in qualifying. He keeps going, no safety car. But that is back of the pack for the Sauber. Bradders to the inside into turn 5. And almost collides with Dropbox, who has that wing damage, of course. The leaders swap over again, but now we see the move for the Racing Bulls. But still, there is now Rio Harris, who's made a move on Dropbox. Danny is just swapping positions, lagging through people probably. But now Rio Harris to the outside into turn 9. Goes around the outside and takes the position. Fluck overtaking Danny again out there. Danny's going backwards and forwards. Not... Don't know what to think of this. Because look at this, he's just going to zip forward in a second probably. Because this is going to be the moment he doesn't do anything now. Because... I don't know. He's left the session now. That must have been the problem there. He was driving slowly. He's left the session, which is going to cost him a Mercedes a chance at ensuring they get ahead of Ferrari, but Lol's doing the job at the moment. Ferrari need a 1-2 with Mercedes scoring no points. They also need a fastest lap. That's just not going to happen. Look, James is all the way back here. James Neas. Back there with Fluck, so absolutely no chance. Surprisingly, only 2 penalties to note down so far. Jake Fluck, who is just making a move there, actually. And there might be another moment into turn 6, because Perkins is going to try and go around the outside. And... oh, Jonathan's facing backwards, I think, and Pastry. And Jonathan having a moment there as Rio Harris and Bradders side by side into turn 10. Bradders is surely going to have this on the inside. Harris might cut back. Harris holding it around the outside. Slight contact. And this is not going to be helping their overall race time, but certainly fun battling for the pair of them. That's probably not what they're thinking, though. But there we go. Fluck has managed to enter the top 10 after those moments there. And I was just saying about the penalties to note down Fluck and Dilbast, but there might be a few more being issued after the race, like we saw with that moment for those two, Pastry and Jonathan. Statlev holds the lead from pole position. Obviously not led the whole race because it's just impossible to do unless it's like wet weather and you can hold the position. Harris and James Nias, they go side by side. James cuts the corner, gets the 3-second penalty and holds the position. Malachi has gone back through for the race lead. These two, Harris and Bradders again. Bradders with much better traction, it seemed, or just a much better drive, was able to get the inside. But Harris must just be feeling held up every time that happens, but it's just, yeah, you've just got to settle in behind and see what will happen. Jonathan leaving the session. Be right on board with Slava. That 9 of 29, Pastry picking up 3 seconds for track limits. And this battle for 7th has reduced down to about 4 now. Fluck up the inside on the damaged Alpine of Dropux. And at the moment, it is going the way of Sauber in the battle for 9th place in the championship, although I'll have to check on what they're actually doing compared to the teams in front. Because, yeah, there could still be movement, especially with Harris now in 7th, but it's unlikely to finish exactly like this. Bradders. And they go side by side again into turn 9. This is just epic battling, but it's not helping their race time. And again, the same pattern in terms of Bradders is ahead to going into there on the inside, and then everybody who's on the racing line just gets forced to slow down a bit. But we'll just check in on the championship standings very quickly. Dilbast, actually. Jonathan, obviously, controlled by AI. That's nothing. Fluck going for that. So Sauber, 6-point gain over Williams, and that could be happening, actually, because Harris is getting 4 points at the moment and could easily make it 6 points. Well, that's 7th place, but I'm not sure how it would go on countback, actually, but at least draw them level on points. Fluck here on the outside. That's Bradders, who was in 7th, but now finds himself in 9th. Perkins and Dropux side by side. Dropux surely will get better drive out of there, but who has the DRS? It's Dropux with DRS. So Perkins might come under pressure here from James Nias around the outside. The Ferrari makes contact with the Alpine. There goes Charlotte Perkins sneaking by on the inside, wheel to wheel into turn 12. James Nias all the way on the inside of all of them. Surely not. Keeps it around the outside and has managed to get both of those places. Charlotte Perkins might sneak by on the inside here, but they wheel to wheel into the last corner and normally doesn't end too well, and unsurprisingly the Alpine backs out, decides better of it. Statlev going for a bit of an early stop. compared to Malachi, and potentially bringing back the strategies that won him his debut race at Silverstone. But he's going to need to clear the traffic if he wants to enact that undercut strategy where he gets out of the DRS range thanks to the undercut and then manages to manage the gap from there. Malachi and Edward continue on in the race leading positions. We'll just check in with them because we've not seen too much of the leaders, but they've just been normally swapping, whereas further back we've had, let's say, not normal swapping. And it might be happening again here because Brazzers on the inside into turn 9. And Rio Harris there turning in, but I'm not sure if Brazzers was really entitled to try and dive in there, but have to see back a replay. Brazzers losing a bit of grip again. And Fluck seemingly has escaped. Both of these two in the pits. Any drama here? There we go, no contact going into the pit lane. Malachi continues on. Statlev now making progress. And is now 19.3 seconds behind Malachi. So, let's see what Statlev can do. See if he can make gains. Purple in the first sector. As look at this, you can see the difference in pace for the Haas on the old hard compound tyres compared to the Red Bull on the new hard compound tyres. A world of difference, of course. And Statlev able to get by. And surely now, if Malachi pitted, Malachi would be out of the DRS range compared to Statlev, but he'll have to hope and work together with Edward. Maybe Bramble gets involved. Surprised Bramble didn't try a bit of an earlier stop to get involved in this DRS train. Malachi there, getting into the pits. Also Edward going into the pits. So this is what it's all going to come down to. Bramble continues to lead out there. Well, Bramble now gains the lead. McLaren do continue though, the race lead. Malachi, Edward there, Fluck in the pits, Statlev with the fastest lap of this race, 24.888. And there we go, Statlev out of the pits and clearly in the race lead. So Malachi will now get the same Perkins moment going on here. Malachi over 3.5 seconds back, and it's very similar involving Perkins, just having to get out of the way or just having to make sure you avoid the Haas getting by using the DRS. So Bramble in the lead of the race, but has not made his pit stop just yet. Perkins obviously needs to stop on the hard tyres. Dilbast, Sailmakers, Danny, Jonathan need to stop, but Danny and Jonathan, I believe, are disconnected, which we did see. So, see what Bramble's doing. Bit of drifting going into the pits, but that will be his stop. Statlev though, 7% worse tyres, but we'll see what Malachi can do. Malachi has escaped from Edward, so it's just a straight fight till the end of this one. Filmmakers with front wing damage from what I can see. Yep, front wing damage, extreme tyre wear. Just an obstruction on the circuit it seems. But it's still out there. Lol. And Bramble immediately out of the pits. Side by side. Bramble is ahead of Lol, but is now potentially going to come under pressure depending on who's got DRS. It's Lol and it's Miguel. And Bramble is going to be overtaken by Lol. Malachi did manage to gain a bit since Statlev and him have made their stops. Well, since Malachi's made his stop, he has gained. It was about 3.5 seconds, if you remember. Now 2.7. Bramble's going to have a look up the inside into turn 9 and gets that place back. Perkins up the road, still out there on the hard tyres. He's done a few times, but it's not been the most successful strategy, I have to say, considering this is what it normally turns out into, just trying to survive as people are just trying to get by as quickly as they can. Bramble up the inside. Perkins onto the curb, and that is going to allow Lol to overtake Miguel. Will be desperate to get by as well, just to avoid anything, any break. Here we go, up the inside. Turn 2, turn 3, surely more grip here. And that is the position done. Perkins really wants a safety car, but it's not on its way just yet. For the race leaders, we have big gain for Malachi on the last lap. Let's compare it to Edward as well. Edward lost 1.2 seconds being out of that DRS now. In the pit lane, Tezza is out of this race. We have AI mode for obviously a few of those. Jonathan and Danny. But there we go. Move here. 4 Bradders. And with DRS comfortably done. Drop hooks. Sailmakers. Drop hooks gets ahead. Sailmakers still yet to make the mandatory pit stop. So, looking at those who did have those qualifying bans, let's just have a look. Danny, Jake Fluck, James. Danny disconnected, hasn't really gone anywhere, of course, because of that. Jake Fluck up into 8th, should be 7th as well when Perkins makes the stop. And obviously James as well, 11th place, should become top 10. Perkins stops. Jake Fluck carrying a 3-second time penalty. James, though, has already beaten out with 6. There's Dilbast getting by on Sailmakers, but almost a bit of a tap there. And again, the driver on 15-lap-old tyres. And the driver of 15-lap-old tyres might even be fighting back here. And is into turn 6. Dilbast without a stop as well, to be fair, and they take each other off and into the barriers, and surely there must be a safety car. No, somehow they're both going. Could have sworn Dilbast was straight into the wall, but no safety car on that occasion. Malachi continuing to gain. Safety car, that was exactly what Perkins was wanting, but it didn't come despite huge moments there. It looked like it could be a huge accident. Drivers smash against the wall and out, but in the end, nothing seemed to actually happen. So, peculiar, but there we go. Malachi's on the charge, and he can see Statlev right in his sights, and has been gaining a lot of time over these last few laps. He's fighting now to get into that DRS range. McLaren, so much downforce and just such a great race car, especially as much as it is a really good car in qualifying as well. But it's the downforce, the way it drives, means you can manage those tyres that much better. And look at how much he just gained in turn 9. A couple of tenths on Statlev there. And this could be a moment to get into the DRS. Bradders, James again swapping over, but we'll see what happens there. Malachi now into the DRS. And you have to feel now that Malachi with those fresher tyres, is really on a charge and could even try and break away from Statlev, who has been trying to pull a strategy where he could get away from Malachi, but it didn't seem to work. And now his main hope is just going to try to, he needs to just try and keep with Malachi until the end of the race. Because Malachi is not going to be wanting, well, Malachi's are going to be wanting Statlev to remain, but Statlev's just going to try and hold on. Malachi with 70% ERS, even more than Statlev. And Malachi is just honing in. The champion, world champion, Malachi. Trying to put our champion's performance here. And a bit of a slide, but it's okay, and he's just gaining slightly, and will eventually be able to go for a move. Surely. Because there's not really much between them now. But it depends, because he might go for a move down towards turn 6, but then obviously there's a second DRS. So DRS games could come into this. But we'll see now. Malachi just taking that wider line, making sure he can set up that exit. And now we'll get an easy drive-by pass. So, Malachi takes the lead of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. And has managed to gain those 3.5 seconds, and now is on a charge to try to pull away. Statlev will be using his battery, using his ERS, trying to keep with Malachi, and obviously has the DRS there. We'll see what Malachi can do. Further behind, down the inside goes Brothers. Harris holds it around the outside, and they lock on. They go off the track, or Brothers mainly, but Harris is ahead. So, Malachi, a half a second lead. We start lap 20, enter the final 10 laps. Edward Bramble has been gaining, certainly. Gained about 2/10 on the last lap, but Bramble does have that 3-second penalty, which could be pretty costly if he can't overtake Edward and then pull away. But it's looking like he's certainly going to be able to catch up to Edward. Lol, though, remains in the fight, and we'll see what Statlev can do. Whether Statlev can keep this as it is and just remain in that fight for the last lap. But looking at the tyre wear, certainly a big difference in tyre wear. Lol going through on Bramble. Statlev in the wheel tracks of the champion. %10 difference in the tyre wear levels. In Malachi's favour, of course, with those 2 extra laps Statlev had to do, 2 quite fast laps really to try and get this undercut situation to happen. I don't know what the track limit situation is. Malachi, slightly less ERS now by about 15%. Statlev is holding this perfectly for now, but Malachi will try and make a charge. Slow moving car there. That's the Sailmakers, sorry, who has lost, whoa, what is puncture for Sailmakers? Absolutely puncture there. Yeah, right rear puncture. So, decided to just stick out, do as many laps as he could with the same tyres. And what did you expect to happen? I don't know. 87% tyres apparently. I mean, that tyres burst, it would have gone 100%. And that is going to be, yep, long gone. Statlev around the outside to take back the lead. So, Malachi made the charge. Statlev has steadied it and now managed to get back into that race lead. But for how long can Statlev hold this? Seems like Malachi, major ERS saving in this final sector. Is it going to lap? Jonathan is going to be lapped here by the two leaders. There we go. Lapping has taken place for them. And there we go. Malachi now 76, 79, 83% TRS, exiting turn 5. Gone all the way up to a 91, 92. Yep, he's just managing this situation here. There we go. Getting a full charge of ERS. Statlev in front. There we go, in the 60s, but I'm sure he'll cotton on to what Malachi is doing and will be trying to combat it. Doesn't want to let Malachi make a big charge and get that second gap. It's just what he needs to avoid. So, in the battle for the minor points positions, Harris is still keeping up with Nias. Nias needs to learn how to pronounce that name more properly, but Radders there. Still just a bit more sensible driving now from the pair of them, it seems. Malachi right on Statlev again as he looks to reinstate his lead of the race. That is the retirement for Sailmakers, which was expected after the puncture. Bit of DRS games here. Detection point has already been passed. Lol out of the race, leaving the session. It's out on the track, but it's not going to cost anyone. It's not going to be a safety car because it's just a forced retirement. Malachi retaking that lead of the race. And there we go. So, we'll see now. Has Statlev got an answer? He's got DRS, and he's going to gain again into turn 9. He doesn't want to let Malachi get away, so he might even try and move again for the lead. But he stays behind, but does have about 30% more ERS than the race leader. Bramble now doesn't have any partner really in LOL to try and get up to Edward, but I'm sure he can manage it himself. Edward, though, doing a decent job for sure to try and hold back that rapid McLaren, the pole sitter from Qatar. LOL unfortunately disconnecting from the race, joined back, but he's already out. So sometimes you just get retired. I don't know if, yeah, sometimes it just retires you from the race. These two, not many laps to go. 5 when they cross the line. There is the main leaving of LOL. Statlev down towards turn 6. Takes back that lead of the race, but we can see Malachi, that ERS light flashing. Wants to go for a big push lap and get past and pull away. Whether Statlev's going to let that happen. Statlev is going to be struggling with his tyres quite a bit. Look at the tyre wear of Malachi there, 32% on the right rear. Just quickly check Statlev. 40% right rear, 45% right front, so it's certainly damaged the right front tyre quite a lot, which is going to be damaging his ability to make these sort of late braking moves, or just late braking in general, getting the turn in required to beat that McLaren, and now having some dirty air from the ghosted Mercedes of Danny. Malachi right there, and is literally neck and neck. But Statlev's going to get some DRS here, and Malachi goes down the inside to take the lead. Statlev though around the outside, and they're now swapped back. And Malachi tried to get that lead, but Statlev with DRS anyway, and managed to fight it off. So with about 4.5 laps to go, Statlev, the pole sitter, does continue to lead the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Malachi's still there, but he's not going to look for a move now. He's had this sort of racing mindset all season where he's just bided his time for the most part. Hasn't got himself involved in too many incidents apart from last round when he was awarded a 3-second penalty for a collision on the last lap. A very minor collision, the grand scheme of things, but a decision was made after an appeal. There's droplets going through. Doesn't look like Sauber are going to be gaining enough points. And there is James on the outside there. Bradders is still behind. Penalties galore for a lot of those behind, and Malachi is going to the outside now and will get a great run compared to Statlev. Out of turn 5, wheel to wheel, and he's going to pull ahead. But is Statlev going to be trying to bide his time again and try and get him back towards turn 9, or just stay in the DRS? Bramble's made the move on Edward behind, but we're watching the battle for the race lead. We'll see if Edward can get it back on the McLaren after we just see what happens down towards turn 9. Edward doesn't seem to be too near to Bramble. Malachi ahead of Statlev and is now in the lead of this race again. We see Radders and James Nears going side by side, and James has pulled back ahead. Bradders, no DRS, and Harris is going to go around the outside. Bradders keeps the place on the inside. Harris with a decent run can't get the place. He's just biding his time. Bradders with 3 seconds, James with 6 seconds. So Harris would actually at the moment inherit that 7th place, which is what he needs to equal Sauber and Williams on points. And actually, thinking about it, Harris, I think, had a 5th place in Jeddah. 5th, was it? He had a very good result, and that might, not entirely sure if it was 5th at Jeddah, but it was certainly a good result, and it might have been in Jeddah. Yeah, I think it might have been 5th in Jeddah, because driver of the day, I do remember things happening, but that might be the result needed to put Sauber ahead of Williams. Statlev around the outside into turn 9, and these games continue on. Statlev over 50% for his tyre wear, I believe. 52 right front. Malachi with much better tyres. Edward keeping Bramble in check, because Bramble, as much as he's got the position on track, has that 3 seconds, which is going to cost him as it stands, unless Edward obviously picks up a penalty of his own. But I'm sure he's taking care, because he knows that that is his humble Bramble slowing down into turn 1. He knows that is his little unique point he can use in order to get position back. Bramble seems to let Bradders by. But Bramble, he lets Bramble by. Yeah, Bramble lets Edward by, and now Bramble is going to get him back again. I mean, Bramble just wants to try and get a breakaway, of course, but Second to last lap, penultimate lap. And Malachi is in the position he wants to be. But there is Dilbast, who could play a part in this lead battle as we head towards the last lap. Because I don't think it is going to play too much of a part now, actually, because ghosted obviously with blue flags, and they will get clear before any DRS points. And the next lapped car is quite a way up the road in pastry. Perkins has gone for the softs. Can Perkins steal a fastest lap from McLaren? McLaren comfortably defending their place over Mercedes. Last lap of the season, last lap of F1 24. And it begins with Statlev leading from Malachi. Will it be a second RFC victory for Statlev? Will it be a victory to end the season for the RFC champion? It looked like almost DRS games there. Statlev seems to have pulled the DRS potentially from the Haas, which might have not got involved, but does get involved. So Malachi is going to have to make a move despite them both having DRS here. And into turn 6, the positions will stay the same. Down the inside goes Dilbast, who's just getting involved here. Dropbox has been disqualified from not using the right tyres. But now Malachi, with a great run down towards turn 9, they're going to go wheel to wheel. Malachi with the overspeed. Statlev trying to defend his position, but Malachi swoops around the outside, but I'm sure Statlev's not going to give this up just yet. Statlev, is he going to send it here? Malachi covers it off. Statlev trying to see if there's any way to get back past, but I don't think there is going to be in this Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, unless there's a move at the last corner. Statlev tries it, but the driver currently doing his GCSEs, it's certainly been an A-star performance this season from Malachi, who wins the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, and the world champion ends the season in the perfect way. Statlev got that second place from pole position, almost the race victory, fought very well with a strategy which put him in the race lead and gave Malachi something to do. Behind, though, Slava actually in 10th there, might just get the point required to keep Williams ahead of Sauber. So that is quite remarkable there. Slava actually gets ahead of James by 8 thousandths of a second. Edward completed the podium from Bramble, who wasn't able to pull the gap. Fluck from far back after a qualifying ban is 5th. Miguel 6th. Harris in 7th. Brazzers in 8th. Slava in 9th. James in 10th. Perkins doesn't get the fastest lap, I don't think. There, Perkins. Try and see what the lap time was. I don't think it wasn't a purple lap, I don't think. Pastry will complete the finishing in 12th. But Malachi ends the season as the final race winner. There we go then, the world champion celebrating a victory, which means that he is equal on race victories with Daniel Llorénte at the end of the season. 6 wins each, but just some other performances able to get him ahead and winning that championship. He'll win it by 27 points. That's not the full story though. It's been a season of ups and downs, but Malachi has done it. In the McLaren, the driver who didn't even really know he was going to start the season, just hopped in round 1 in an Aston Martin, managed to pick up a victory there, and that set him up for a very good season. Podiums in many races to start the season. I think it was 7 podiums in a row to start the season. Didn't finish, was out of the race in Brazil because of some issues. Didn't finish on the podium at Monza. Back-to-back race victories after some teammate play from McLaren. But that led him to, well, he was then out of the race in Jeddah. Closed the championship up. Qatar as well. Thought he'd won the race, but then that was stripped away from him. But in the end, he does take the championship. So that is a wrap on season 5 for RFC. A very good season, ups and downs, and that is it. Then we'll see you back for season 6 on F1 25.